Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This podcast is for mature audiences. Suicide is discussed in this episode. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to Season 2 of Fool Me Twice. There's an accessibility transcript that can be found at our website, foolmetwicepod.com.
Beware, my friend, trouble roads are to come. Tall grass on the snakes fall not for their charm. Lift your head, forget the dance in your pride. Sometimes in life we need to be fooled twice.
Episode 1. The Lost Diamonds of Sheung.
Somewhere in the world, right now, a man is walking into a jewelry store with one very specific purpose. He probably looks around, feeling the out-of-placeness a lot of people might feel in a store designed to display so much opulence. He probably tells a sales assistant why he's there and is immediately ushered on a wave of warm congratulations towards a very specific part of the store. The assistant guides his attention to a selection of rings, perhaps lifting a velvet-covered tray out of a glass cabinet and onto the gleaming countertop. He might peer down at the various shapes and configurations of metal and stone, hoping that he will just know which one to choose. It takes a while. The sales assistant is very accustomed to these conversations, gently educating customers on the aspects that make up a diamond's value, pointing out the difference between cushion, heart, and pear, and speculating, based on what can be seen at face value in her customers so far, what might be the right stone in the right setting and in the right price bracket. It's entirely possible that he walks out of the store that day with a small velvet box burning a hole in his pocket, one step closer to saying the 4 fateful words he knows will change his life forever.
Chapter 1. Tiffany the Diamond Thief.
Upon meeting Tiffany, actually I was the one who opened the door for her. Very unassuming lady, super casual. I guess she had an expensive handbag. Hermes handbag, that was about it. I don't recall her wearing any jewelry or anything, super friendly. And then I sat her down in here. And then I didn't see her until she was ready to go and pay for the diamond down at the bank. So I accompanied Tiffany to go down to the bank. And she paid, and we sat down at the Premier Lounge, and she came back and showed me the transfer receipt. And I just took a photo and sent it off to Anna and waited for her to give me the okay or not okay.
We thought we were doing our due diligence in a way by confirming the deposit with our finance manager, accompanying her to the bank, not allowing her to take the diamonds like that. And so we thought we were doing what we had to do, but obviously it wasn't enough.
This is a podcast about diamonds. My mum and I were approached by a woman in Hong Kong who owns a diamond business and had a pretty compelling story to tell. Hearing her story, I became interested in diamonds themselves and started doing some digging. This podcast follows that story and attempts to unravel some of the shadier aspects of the diamond industry as a whole. My mum conducted interviews and I put it all together. This is Fool Me Twice. Chapter 2. How it all started. In late 2019 in Hong Kong, a woman named Tiffany Wong made contact with a small locally owned diamond business, seeking a very specific diamond. She was looking for specifications like 5 to 6 carats, DEF in color, VVS 1 or 2 clarity. All this means is that she was looking for a diamond with excellent cut, polish, and symmetry, with no fluorescence. The employees of the diamond business contacted their suppliers, and that day they were in luck. There were a number of diamonds that met Tiffany's requirements. They asked her if she would like to come in and view them. Tiffany agreed, and they made an appointment.
Like she had said, casual, easygoing, didn't seem nervous at all. Just walked in and was chatty, but not overly chatty or anything like that. Her English wasn't great, so that was why I asked my colleague to help me out a little bit. And then because we had such high value stones, I had another salesperson accompany me in the meeting and sit in on it the whole time. And then when I would go in to like check prices and things like that, she would stay here, talk to her. What she was wearing also, I think, was strategic. You know, it's like the athleisure wear alongside an Hermes bag, you know, and that is actually what a lot of people in Hong Kong who have money wear. If you didn't know it was an Hermes bag, you wouldn't know it was an Hermes bag because it's not like a Birkin bag or anything. I did go back and I said, does this happen? You know, when, you know, people are telling you, oh, well, you know, you don't spend that way because you're not rich like that. Well, you're right. None of us are.
Dr. Scott Musgrove, a forensic psychologist, has some thoughts on the way Tiffany presented herself.
You know, one of the things that popped up for me as you were describing her is sort of that she was unassuming and even maybe not particularly notable physically or behaviorally. Now, that actually makes a successful spy. The CIA doesn't hire handsome people. They hire people that can melt into the background. So if you have someone that is trying to gain your confidence, there is a fine line between, you know, we do have a tendency to give special treatment towards people that are physically attractive. At the same time, we can also be threatened by it. Like, oh, wow, this is like somebody that's really, really good looking, and you get intimidated versus, oh, well, here's this mousy little woman who is just trying to cut me a deal on this particular gem. Why wouldn't I? She seems trusting.
It's worth mentioning that in Hong Kong, there's almost a caricature of a persona that most people are aware of, which is the tai-tai. And it's a total stereotype, but like a lot of stereotypes, they really do exist. There is a lot of money that flows through Hong Kong, as it's the financial hub of Asia, and therefore there are a lot of people who have big money living and traveling through. The tai-tai stereotype is an older woman married to a man who has money, and has almost unlimited disposable income to spend on whatever she chooses. Most of these women are highly educated and gave up their careers upon marriage to become high-profile wives. Businesses are aware of them and the potential cash flow they bring. An article in the South China Morning Post says, the tai-tai with her high-consumption lifestyle can be considered the quintessential luxury customer. It's very possible that the sales assistants at Ryder Diamonds were operating under the assumption that Tiffany fell into this category of woman, who have luxury taste and immense purchasing power. In an article written about these women called They Fear the Sell-By Date by Monica Gui, it is said that there is no such thing as a Hong Kong tai-tai who doesn't know how much things cost. This is Sally Ryder.
Hi, I'm Sally Ryder. I'm the founder of Ryder Diamonds. I've been living in Hong Kong for 15 years and I have 2 kids, Charlie who is now 2 and Jack who's 6, and I have a great husband named Sheung. So there are a lot of things that we do in the industry to safeguard our gems. First of all, we have insurance. So that should insure us for loss, theft and damage. Secondly, we take precautions with, security, cameras, all those sort of things. But it's very easy to get complacent, because you forget about the value of the product that you're working with. And, diamonds are such a condensed source of wealth and value. You can literally hold the value of a block of flats in your hand. Isn't that amazing? in a single stone. So when you've been working with diamonds a long time, you can get complacent about the value of them.
Chapter 3. The Illusion of Scarcity. The price of diamonds depends on a lot of things, and one of those things is the perception that they are rare. You might know about the economics of supply to demand ratio that gives people the feeling of something having a certain value. If I can't get something easily, if there aren't many of them out there, then I should be willing to pay more for it, right? For thousands of years, diamonds were found mainly in riverbeds in India and Brazil. They were reserved to be worn by royalty. In fact, King Louis XIV of France made sure of that. By royal decree, diamonds were only to be worn by those who were deemed worthy of them. It remained the case that diamonds were worn only by the rich and powerful until the 1870s, when huge diamond deposits were discovered in South Africa. The days of only being able to find diamonds by panning for them in riverbed deposits were over. Diamonds were about to flood the market. An enormous diamond mine began in the Kimberley region of South Africa, and initially people could buy what was called a claim in this mine. A claim was a pit, 31 by 31 feet, and when you had one of those, that was your pit to dig up diamonds from. The problem was there was often flooding in the claims, and the walls of many of them started to collapse, and it got quite dangerous. A young man from England named Cecil Rhodes saw a business opportunity in the flooding and started charging people to come and pump the water out of their claims. Cecil made a lot of money from the flooding and used that money to slowly buy up other people's claims. It took a bit of time and some very hostile business moves, but the Kimberley mine went from about 430 individual claims owned by many hundreds of people to being completely owned by Cecil Rhodes. In 1888, he created a new company, De Beers Consolidated Mines. Cecil Rhodes was an aggressive businessman, and as the diamond industry expanded with the discovery of new mines around the African continent, he kept acquiring the mines, or at the very least securing majority shares in them. There was a great contradiction happening. There was suddenly the potential for unlimited numbers of diamonds to come onto the market, and this was a big problem for our Mr. Rhodes. Because if people were to believe that diamonds were worth paying a lot of money for, diamonds still had to appear rare and special. 2 years after De Beers was formed, Rhodes signed a sales contract with the newly formed London Diamond Syndicate, who agreed to buy most of the diamonds that De Beers produced, and allowed Rhodes to begin perfectly matching supply with demand. He thus began the traditional practice in the diamond industry of stockpiling huge reserves of diamonds, which still continues to this day. In short, De Beers formed a cartel. Let me explain what I mean here. I had heard the word cartel mainly from shows like Breaking Bad and usually referring to scary illegal businesses involving drugs and kidnappings. But the true meaning of a cartel is an arrangement between manufacturers or suppliers in an industry who agree that they will keep prices high and restrict competition. It's not necessarily any less illegal, but it is far more accepted by capitalist society. And it worked. For decades, De Beers had a total monopoly on the diamond trade, and even as new mines were discovered, they would either buy up majority shares in those mines or else force them to enter into an agreement that artificially augmented the number and price of diamonds that were allowed on the market. It's also worth noting that Rhodes was a staunch imperialist, believing that the world would benefit from much more British occupation of territory, envisioning an unbroken British-controlled Cape to Cairo. He was a rampant white supremacist, believing white people to be the first race, and quoted as saying, "Treat the natives as a subject people, as long as they continue in a state of barbarism and communal tenure, be the lords over them and let them be a subject race." In his later life, his politics helped build the architecture of apartheid by working to institute racist laws on voting and land ownership. He used his fortune to establish the Rhodes Scholarship, though only men were able to win it, and it remained an almost completely male and white-won award until the 1960s and 70s. Both southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and northern Rhodesia, now Zambia, were colonized by him, added by him to the British Empire, and named after him. Now, his history does not mesh well with the current climate. In June 2020, 240,000 people signed a petition to have his statue taken down in a movement to decolonize Oxford University. 5 years ago, the hashtag Rhodes Must Fall was trending as South African students and activists called for the end of his status as a role model and the end of the placement of so-called conquerors on pedestals. The more I spent time researching diamonds, the more it naturally became my answer when people asked me what I was doing with my life. I would say I'm writing a podcast about diamonds, and people lit up with some kind of opinion or sad story or memory of an heirloom they wanted to share. It seemed like everyone knows a diamond story or knows someone who knows one, so I started collecting them. Listen to a story about a very meaningful heirloom from my friend Daniel.
My name is Daniel. I'm from Montreal, Canada, and I'm a video game developer by trade. So my diamond story goes back to my grandfather, actually. He had a wedding ring with diamonds and all that. Very beautiful, very big. He had nice, big, strong hands. And when he died, it was a shock to the whole family as he died through his own choices as a suicide. And after that, my grandmother inherited the ring, and she had it reshaped so that it could fit her fingers. And many years later, my grandmother died of cerebrovascular problems. And so when she died, the family decided that I would inherit my grandfather's ring. So they gave it to me. So the ring was, well, at that time was too small for my own fingers because my grandmother had pretty small hands. So back then I decided to wear it along a chain on my neck. So that was a silver chain. Then I wore that way for a month or two until the winter came about. And, you know, in Montreal, the winter, you've got scarves and coats and hoodies and so many layers. And one day I got to work and I removed some of those layers, and the chain had broken and it was dangling from my neck by being hooked on a thread or something, but the ring was nowhere to be seen. And so I took the day off from work and I retraced back my steps, the subways, the sidewalks, searched everywhere for it, and I could never find it. So it was completely lost. And I even took, a few days of wait time to see if anybody would have turned it up as the lost and found in the subway systems and companies. But even there, nothing came up. I guess that's the sad story of that ring. So how did that affect me emotionally? Mostly, you have to understand what kind of person my grandfather was in the family. And being an orphan, was raised by the church in an orphanage back then, and then managed to get enough studies to land a land surveyor job at Hydro-Quebec, which is the nationalized electrical company here, and was part of many big projects and became a leader of men in a way and inspired many stories. So the family regarded him pretty highly. And so the ring became a sort of symbol of, a good memory of him. And it being entrusted to me was also pretty significant for me, as if I was like carrying on his legacy in a way. So that's been pretty intense. And the fact that I lost the ring, I never built up the courage yet to tell my family about that. And that's going to be like 6-7 years ago that I lost the ring. So I still haven't told them about it. I can say that I learned anything from it. It's mostly that we sometimes tend to put way too much significance and, attachment to physical objects. Well, of course, diamonds are at the core of important tradition in our culture. So, weddings and ring giving and other jewels and things like that. So them being rare, I guess, and for a significant moment, we invest even more onto them. So what I wish I knew before getting the ring was definitely to maybe not attach so much importance or not get the pressure of that on me so that I would have to carry that burden in a way. But that's not a bad thing in and out of itself. I think small mementos like that are fine. And it's a beautiful symbol. So in a more practical way, probably I would have liked to know that there was a significant risk on wearing such a ring around my neck on a chain. I wouldn't let the ring rot in a box at home either. I think it's meant to be worn. So I would probably handle the reshaping of the ring to my finger size much faster and actually wear it. Although I'm not a jewel wearer myself, I guess that's the best thing you can do with such thing. Or maybe give it off to someone else in my family that would be happier than me to carry it. So moving forward, I don't know if that event in particular changed a lot my mindset, but probably compounded with many other events that are similar to that, I tend to lose things very easily. I really built a mentality of, physical things or material things are not that important. It's just move on. Don't get attached too much to that. There's a balance to be had, I think, because we do live in a physical world and we need practicality and symbolism to remember important things. So moving forward, I think these are definitely lessons and thoughts that I carry so I can think about it and reevaluate where I stand from time to time on that. Moving forward, I think that the biggest is the fact that I didn't even tell my family yet. So it's hopefully, I think I forgave myself, but it's more of how they're going to react when I say it, and there's no reason to tell it now. And there's no reason to wait that much either. So if I have a good opportunity, why not?
Chapter 4. Sally is on a cruise.
Last year, around October, I booked a holiday for my husband and I. We really needed to spend some time together, and it was our first holiday away from the kids, and we'd booked a 10-day holiday. It was a cruise, and I always thought that cruises were for either old people or really boring, weird people, which either means that I'm either old and boring or I got it wrong. But we booked this cruise, and I booked it because a friend of mine that I met at the Hong Kong Yacht Club in Hong Kong a decade ago, Lisa, her name is, we became friends on Facebook, and she has this amazing lifestyle where she travels the world on these, amazing boats and yachts. And she contacted me out of the blue and said, Sal, that Windstar boat that I'm always on? I'm like, yes, Lisa, I'm so envious of your fantastic life. She said, well, I've become a rep for this company and I've got this awesome deal on the Windstar, but you have to leave in 7 days. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, let me run it by Shane. And we talked about it, and we really needed some time together. So we did it, and we took off, started in Greece, and the Windstar's this beautiful sailing yacht. And I think it's about 100 passengers on board. And it was so luxurious. It was amazing. And we'd never been to Greece, and we started there. So that was a really great start to the holiday. And did a few islands around Greece, and then went up the Amalfi Coast and had a brilliant time. It was so much fun. We really enjoyed it, and it was really great quality time for us to spend together. And towards the end of the trip, actually it was while we were out at sea, there was no Wi-Fi. And when we came back into Rome, I got a message from one of my sales girls here in the office saying, oh, Sal, we need to talk to you. And I was like, okay. So gave them a call, and she said, look, I sold a pair of 5 carat diamonds to this lady. I'm like, oh my God, wow. How much was that worth? And she told me it was 3.5 million Hong Kong dollars. I'm like, who's this lady? And she said, oh, apparently she knows one of your friends, Sam. I'm like, oh, Sam who? Can't think of who she knows and who's referred her. And she said, and there's been a little bit of a problem. I'm like, okay, what's the problem? And she said, well, when I met with Tiffany, she told me that she was doing a cash transfer, and I accompanied her to the bank, and she gave me a receipt for the cash transfer, and I rang Anna, who's our accountant, and I asked Anna to check the account, and Anna told me that the money was there, and it's now 2 days later and the money's not there anymore. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? The money's not there. If it was a cash transfer, how can the bank just take the money out? That doesn't make any sense. And she says, yeah, I'm not sure. And I've called Tiffany, and she said that there must be a problem with the bank. And anyway, it was all a bit, up in the air as to what was going on. And I said, well, what does Tiffany say? Is she going to pay the money now? And she said, well, she's going to Canada or she's in Canada or something like this. And I'm like, oh my God. I said, well, look, I'll be home in a day or two. Let's deal with it then. At the time, it didn't sound like my sales girl was that concerned. And she was dealing with Tiffany, the client, and Tiffany kind of made her, I guess, feel like, oh, there was just a problem with the bank. It's fine. Initially, I was like, oh, that's a bit of a worry, but it sounds like they've got it under control. And I don't know, like I remember saying to the Shane at the time, oh, something's going down at work. And yeah, at that point in time, I had no idea what was in store.
In the next episode of Fool Me Twice, things unravel quite a lot further. Suspicions turn into real fears, and the possibility that things might just figure themselves out gets dimmer. Something happens to Sally that makes the reality of her situation hit her like a metric ton of bricks. Make sure you subscribe so that you can catch our next episode. Are diamonds forever? This podcast was created, researched, and edited by Jules Hannaford. And we couldn't have done it without Sally Ryder and everyone else who helped us to tell this story. We're infinitely grateful to our experts, Drs. Scott and Shiloh, as well as Roger Grimes, and those who lent us their voices, Kinney Orbarlo, Sonia DeAndrea, and Matt Schnuth. The theme song is sung by Angel Meyerhoff, and the sound design is by Shade Furlong. Please consider going to our Patreon and supporting us with a once-off or monthly contribution. I'm Zara Hannaford, and I wrote this thing, and I've been your host.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.